What up, gamers? It's me, ya boy, back at it again with another Borderlands 3 critique video. Last time I did this, we had 4 significant chunks of DLC to sink our teeth into. I never liked the base game of Borderlands 3, and my mind has not changed on that, but I did enjoy all the content released afterwards significantly more. Well, now we have 2 utterly bizarre DLCs to round off the whole experience. The also creatively named Season Pass 2 is not exactly what I was expecting. What I expected was more full-size DLC packs. I didn't understand why they weren't doing that until I saw the announcement for Wonderlands, the new Tiny Tina D&D themed solo spin-off, which I am somewhat hopeful for, since if there's one thing Borderlands 3 proves, it's that they can still tell good jokes now and then. For now, we're left with 2 final DLC packs to go through, and they present a weird, limp way to wrap up the whole 2-year experience that has been Borderlands 2. So, let's talk about the designer's cut and the director's cut. I guess. My first impression of the designer's cut was to be sort of insulted at the price of it. I'm honestly a little bit insulted that they charged for it at all, but I'll give it a pass for the new skill trees. I guess. Maybe. In case it's not clear what this DLC even is, which I was very unclear on at first, the designer's cut grants a new skill tree for each of the player characters and a new game mode thingy called Arms Race, which features the return of Axton and Salvador from Borderlands 2. Sort of. I mean, first question, does anybody at Gearbox know what a cut is? A cut in film parlance is generally an edit of the movie, like, famous example in recent history, Justice League. You have the original cut, which came out in 2017 and ran for 2 hours, and then you have the Snyder cut, which came out in 2021 and ran for 4 hours and was framed in 4:3 aspect ratio. That's what a cut is. I'm not sure what exactly a designer's cut would be, but I would be kind of curious to find out. I'm imagining a reworking of the game's core mechanics, mixing up and changing level designs, reworking on skill trees, basically a bunch of tweaks to the game that the designers wanted to do originally but didn't for one reason or another. This is not that. This is a DLC somewhere on the level with Digistruct Peak from Borderlands 2 with some new skill trees. By no definition of the word would I call this a cut. I think I've been pedantic about this for long enough now. Let's instead ask, who exactly is this DLC for? I'll start with the new skill trees, because I really don't have much to say about them. Granted, I've only properly played around with Amara's tree, which is a cryo-focused tree with an action skill, which is a big orb of damage. I used it for the first couple of missions of the director's cut, and then I stopped and went back to my old build because it was finicky, glitchy, and hard to use or ever really understand. So you've got this big ball that when you punch it, it flies towards an enemy, but it doesn't track, it flies in a straight line, which means it's extremely likely to get caught on level geometry, rendering it useless. And I learned you can totally spawn it below the map, so that's fun. I found actually landing melee attacks on the thing to be really difficult, and I tended to punch through the thing to an enemy standing behind it. Then I saw there's a version of it that auto-seeks enemies you shoot at, which is definitely better, but also it still gets stuck on level geometry all the time. In summary, maybe the rest of the skill trees are better. I don't know, but Amara's seemed a bit silly and overcomplicated and also came out a year and a half after the game's launch with what looks like no more major DLC coming out after. Seems a bit too late to me. The people that do obsessively play this game, grinding it on the hardest difficulties and maximising their builds, maybe this is for them? But I have a hard time imagining that even they were overly satisfied. But hey, at least the new skill trees are theoretically fun. Let's talk about Arms Race. Arms Race is, I think, the weirdest thing Gearbox have ever put out as DLC. It's like playing an experiment. A gameplay idea that I'm honestly kind of shocked became more than an idea. The experiment is looking to answer a couple of questions. 1. Can you make a single-player battle royale game? 2. Would Borderlands still be fun if you stripped it down to the bare bones? Well, the results are in, and the answer is no, on both counts. Here's how it works. You enter a big arena with none of your weapons or abilities and have to scavenge what you can find from across the arena as the border of the map shrinks and shrinks, forcing you into one final encounter where you can hopefully win with the weapons you've been able to gather. You can then send any weapons you like back to the base game for use later, and for whatever reason it's a game show hosted by former player characters Axton and Salvador.
Team Vault Hunter has a little time before the murder cane begins to move. Sal, what do they need to focus on to pull out a win? They should shoot a lot of people right in their face, Axe!
I feel the need to clarify something first. I have never actually played a Battle Royale game. Shocking, I know, but it's a subgenre I've managed to avoid so far, so I can't tell you how this compares to other Battle Royale games in a direct sense. I can tell you though that this game mode is a boring waste of time. It's a bad idea executed poorly, and it demonstrates a poor understanding of what even makes Borderlands fun? I've said many a harsh thing about Borderlands 3, but I've always felt that the minute-to-minute gameplay is the strongest element. Combat at its best in Borderlands 3 is a chaotic dance with you at the eye of the storm. As you climb the skill tree, your playstyle becomes more chaotic. With my build, for example, which is a melee and elemental build, you get crazy health regen and dash punches and magic arms that block damage for you, and combined with some of the more fun legendary guns, Borderlands 3 flourishes in the mayhem. The core idea of arms race taking you back to the bottom of the power curve and having you scavenge your way back up isn't an awful idea, but stripping away all your abilities really is. Without the abilities and skills, Borderlands is just another shooter with a lot of different guns. It's fine, but the mayhem, the chaotic dance, is totally gone. There's a fine balance at play here between the guns and the variety of enemies and the skills and abilities, and taking one of those away throws the whole balance and makes the arms race an absolute chore to play. It also forces you to recognise something I can't believe I never mentioned in the previous videos, that Borderlands 3's inventory system is awful, especially compared to the last generation. Everything is so small and hard to read, and you absolutely cannot tell what type of gun you're looking at just from shape anymore. The colours are so muted as to be almost indistinguishable, especially blues and purples, and overall it's just a bad time, and this game mode is almost entirely inventory management. This is all coupled with what has to be one of the blandest maps in the entire game, a big snowy concrete industrial complex. The arena's big, arguably too big, but every single corner of it looks exactly the same. Oh wow, another big concrete structure, I never would have guessed. For a glorious second, when I first fast travelled to this area, I was excited, because I thought it was the same location from Tales from the Borderlands Episode 3, the big biodome place with lots of different environments. That would have been a cool setting for this kind of game mode, but no, just a big, dull concrete blob. The map border that shrinks, or the murder cane as they call it, is obviously ripped straight from a Battle Royale game, but I don't think they gave this even a second of thought. It forces you, the player, into a smaller area, but enemy spawns are the same. There's still specific areas where they spawn, so the fighting doesn't actually get more hectic as the map shrinks, it just limits you to the spawn areas around the middle. Then, to top it all off, you have the hosts, the surest sign that Gearbox just fully gave up on trying to do anything good or interesting with these characters. I like Axton and Salvador, they're quite funny, but they're not funny enough to save this game mode. Plus there's so few lines of dialogue for this mod that they were already starting to repeat on my third run. They really add nothing to the experience. It's like they were added as a token gesture just so it can be included on the fan wiki that they were technically in this game. Maybe they just estimated that nobody would actually bother to play this game mode more than once, because there's absolutely no reason to do so. There's some new legendaries in there, I assume, but there's already so many legendaries in this game, and basically any other way of getting them is more fun than this. The most enjoyable part of this DLC was when I got to one of the areas and this popped up on screen. Damn, WTF, water treatment facility. And I went, ha, that's clever. That was it. Bask in it. The best part of the DLC. Who is this DLC for? As far as I can tell, nobody. Nobody wanted this, nobody played this, I don't know why this exists. Well, got a bit mean there at the end, didn't I? Thankfully the director's cut is much better? It's still not a director's cut, not by any sense of the word, which is a shame, because if there's one thing Borderlands 3 needed, it was a second draft. But the director's cut does feel more right as a final piece of DLC for the game, for better and for worse. The core of this DLC is a series of missions with Ava and her attempt to make a podcast out of a string of seemingly paranormal murders. What it actually is a tour of all the old locations from the base game and their supporting characters for one last appearance before the franchise moves on. As that, I think it actually works pretty well. Returning to the old planets and seeing the old faces felt quite nostalgic, even though I wasn't big on the base game. And also this DLC especially brings out the best of what these locations have to offer. The dingy back streets of Promethea looked amazing. Plus, I'm a sucker for a murder mystery. Centering the DLC on Ava was obviously important to them. Ava was, shall we say, a divisive figure back in the base game. As I said at the time, I like Ava as a character. I enjoy her awkward teenagerness. But the way she was used in the base game was just an incoherent mess. This DLC also has the same problem, but to a much lesser extent. Despite what the podcast framing device might suggest, this DLC feels much more like an epilogue to the base game more than anything else. And as such, it opens a lot of those old wounds. Yes, it's time for the return of the dreaded mystery box. Borderlands 3 had an infuriating inability to answer any questions or solve any hanging plot threads, and this DLC, which could have been used to resolve any of them at all, instead introduces a big new one which throws the entire game into question. But we'll get to that. On an individual mission scale, this DLC is quite good, and for a hot second, there actually seemed to be an interesting mystery going on. The first is a murder in a dingy apartment on Promethea. You rifle through the poor guy's stuff and end up chasing the murderer to a train station where he jumps in front of a train instead of coming in for questioning. The second on Eden 6 is a friend of Clay's who's gone missing. It seems like he's been kidnapped and he's left recordings of him being threatened by a mysterious voice, but you find him just as he's been killed. However, the final recording reveals that he was talking to himself. Alright, you got me hooked now, Borderlands 3. Where are you going with this? The third mission takes you to Pandora. Is anyone else sick of Pandora? Where a Crimson Raider has found a clue, but he's super dead when you get there. Time to raid the local bandit base for information. In the middle here, you get to the biggest mystery of the whole DLC. How to open this goddamn door. Now, maybe this is my fault for not playing the game in over a year, but I had completely forgotten that Borderlands 3 had these electricity puzzles, and there's no objective marker that makes that clear either. I actually assumed something had broken, so I restarted the game, and while I was waiting, I decided to look up a playthrough to see what was supposed to happen, which is when I realised you're supposed to hit this very unobvious button here and shoot this switch up here in the dark to open the door. Again, maybe I'm just dumb, but also this door was a dick move. Then, when I finally got to the boss, I insta-killed him by knocking him into this giant meat grinder. Yay? But also, no, because that soft-locked the quest, and then I really did have to reset, because what's supposed to happen is he gives up and unlocks this door before being possessed and jumping into the grinder himself. When you finally find the head of that one guy you were looking for, you hear his last recording, which is him arguing with a voice in his head about having to help the COV before killing himself via death by Skags. The final mission takes you back to Necrotafeo to explore a rotting and decaying Iridian temple, during which you see visions of the events which transpired before you got to the crime scene. A mysterious figure called the Seer was guiding them each along specific actions to maintain causality. It's revealed that this figure was secretly pulling the strings behind the scenes during the base game to ensure the correct things happened. Apparently Lilith teleporting the moon away wasn't part of the plan, so now the Seer wants to kill you. So they try, and fail, and we get the last line of the DLC.
You heard what that Guardian said. That I'd find what I was seeking. There's only one thing that can mean. Lilith's still out there. And we're gonna find her.
Yeah, I know, I said that when I finished the game 2 years ago. So this is dumb, right? Here, in the very final DLC, we're going to retcon that the entire plot of Borderlands 3 was actually elaborately organised by this mysterious alien figure, and then we won't even get to see the fruits of that plan because they're just killed off, instantly. What the hell was that? If you're gonna set up a new villain, don't just kill them off. I thought when I got here this DLC was being used as a bit of backdoor setup for Borderlands 4, but no, this mysterious alien is just dead now.
This place is falling apart. I thought Iridian stuff survived forever.
Yeah, it kinda seemed that way to me too, Ava. Why is this one rotting and decaying? I don't know. I'll never know. They have no intention of ever elaborating. They just thought it looked cool. It's symbolic that these visions are triggered by bloody boxes. It's all just a bunch of cryptic nonsense that they haven't even come up with an answer for yet, and they'll probably just completely ignore when Borderlands 4 rolls around if their track record is anything to go by. I guess that makes it the perfect send-off to the game, doesn't it? Starting by ignoring what came before and ended with something that the next game will ignore as well. It's like fucking poetry. There's a couple other scraps in Season Pass 2, a couple of, I guess, cool skins, and a dump of behind-the-scenes content. A dump is really the best way I can think to say it. It's like they just uploaded the content of their development Google Drive into the game. I'm not saying none of it is interesting, but is it worth $20? I don't think so. I have talked about Borderlands 3 for longer than I have any other game, any other subject on this channel actually, and for what? It was clear at launch that the game wasn't what I wanted it to be, and yet I have sunk so much time and I keep coming back and back to it anyway. Why? It's because I see so much potential in this game. It really could have been amazing. People are understandably pissed at Gearbox right now, and I understand that. I am one of these people. Charging $40 for this is absolutely taking the piss. It would have been overpriced at half of that, but I still came back to it anyway. I still felt the need to make this video. I still had a lot to say about this game. At the end of all of it, I just can't bring myself to disregard this game. There's too much quality, too much love and attention put into the details for me to completely condemn it and say I hate it. Or maybe I'm just in an abusive relationship with this game, unable to accept that it's treating me wrong. There was one final thing added by the director's cut. A new raid boss. Hemoverus the Invincible. It's one of the most boring raid bosses they've ever done, quite frankly, and I've never been big on raid bosses to begin with. Just a big ol' bullet sponge with a boring fight location and a reused enemy model. The mission told me I would die a lot, but I beat the thing in one go. I went after it for the achievement, which I got, but then the quest glitched. Even though I had killed the boss, the objective never ticked over, trapping me in the empty arena forever. It wasn't that I was going to die a lot to the boss. I was going to die a lot because the game is still a buggy mess. I closed the game, and that seems as good a place as any to leave the game for good.
I have a confession to make.
You've never played KOTOR?
I've never played KOTOR.
That's okay, Nathan. I also have a confession to make.
Yeah.
I've never played KOTOR.
Kaylee's never played KOTOR?
I know.
Everyone's played KOTOR. I know